and stage it so that it's not just a massive upheaval of what's just developed over time over there for the last, I don't know how many years. All right, I'll step out and I'll probably step back in, but those are my initial kind of design comments.
So Chip, Chris, obviously agree. I'm a Sailing Beach guy forever. My son works there. So have a little bit of a different insight than, you know, what I did a couple of years ago because of Ben's work at the beach. The one thing I'd like to, the architects to point out is that, you know, the two buildings of the sailing area, one is the office, and then the other is the I don't know, the shack. So the thing that I think would be bad is if after everything is all said and done, there's no shack. I mean, the concept of that sailing shack is kind of, you know, the shack's been there for 50 years, you know, and it's really, that's what it is. It's a sailing shack. It's never going to be anything more. You know, while I completely love the work that you guys did at Evanston and the facility that's there, this is not what the sailing beach is. This is, you know, it needs to be, you know, an old rundown 1950s wooden box, and the kids will love it. You know, it does what they need to do. It's, you know, perfectly suited for them. The one thing that I have heard from them is that if we put facilities down there, if we put a full-blown bathroom in there and it's attached to the shack, it's going to be horrible. And I kind of agree. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily want to work next to a bath. Well, I do actually work next to a bathroom every day, but that's different. That's in my house. But that's one of those things that, you know, I've kind of changed my opinion on. I was so gung-ho for getting, you know, new buildings down there that, you know, that was one of the big things that when you guys did the stuff last time I was concerned with. I think that we can do some upgrades to the portalettes. You know, Steve and I have talked about doing, you know, some sort of portable seasonal, you know, 3-season portable bathrooms in there that do have the ability to hook into plumbing if they need to, but then don't. I like the concept of a mobile portalette that could then be taken up and, say, put by, you know, the ice skating areas that we do in Gillson, or, you know, the one that we do over on the west side in the baseball fields over there. You know, that's, you know, something that we could do. I mean, the thing that I hate about the whole effort that we've done is that, you know, we've spent a ton of money for something that's used basically 9 months out of the year. 3 months out of the year, it's just sitting there being a box on the sand. So that's one thing I want to think about when we do look at the sailing beach, is that, you know, try and minimize the amount of changes to it, you know, and look at the facility from a standpoint of it's a 9-month facility, maybe, you know, and what can we do with it over time? What can we use the things that we've got there elsewhere in the park and save some money that way? The other thing that I would want to point out is that, you know, with, you know, the 2020 season and the COVID restrictions, it was quite apparent that policing people coming into and out of the beaches was hard. You know, tons of people coming down Elmwood, walking down into our, you know, through the sailing beach to the swimming beach, and all the efforts on trying to restrict access into that, you know, was you know, obviously a work in progress. And Steve, you guys did a wonderful job on that last year. But if there's anything we can look at from that standpoint, it would be helpful also. Now, I would point out that given this winter, they'd obviously have to be movable, because, you know, where we would have put them last year would be about 3 feet underwater right now. You know, so that's one thing that we've got to be really conscious of, is the fact that, you know, anything we put down there is going to be underwater, or has the potential of being underwater, or in the other scenario, could be 200 yards from the water, you know, based off of, you know, changes in the lake stuff. So I know the architects are quite up on that. Just want to think about that in the future.
All right. My name's Rachel Goodman. I'm actually a kayaker, so I'm representing the kayaking community. I know some of the Lakota people because I live in West Wilmette and near Loyola, so I think I've seen you guys before. Anyway, I guess a couple things. First of all, when I've talked to a couple other people, because I do want to represent the kayakers, one of the first things people have said is bathrooms and changing rooms. So it sounds like we have to do that in a respectful way, but I think it would be nice to be able to have bathrooms and changing rooms. And you brought up an interesting concept about it only being 9 months a year. But one of the things when we even talked about doing, you know, the main sailing beach, the main beach, the swimming beach, which was a beautiful job. You guys did an amazing job on that, is that, you know, it would be nice if you're walking on the beach, if there was a bathroom that was open instead of having things locked in the winter. So finding ways to utilize in the winter time as well. So bathrooms, changing rooms, and then, you know, you try and find ways to use the beaches year round by having a bathroom available. Instead of taking it away, making it available and having people down there. The other thing is, you know, and this is a little bit complicated, but there are almost 3 communities at the beach. There is the sailing community, there's the kayakers, and the stand-up paddlers. And then there's also people, I could do a 4th, who just hang out on the beach, don't do any of those, but just socialize down there as they own a boat. But you know, I do feel like they are sort of almost separate communities, and it would be nice to find a way to straddle that and be able to have all the communities communicate a little better amongst themselves. And that, I think, might also help with communication. So my biggest thing is lanes for launching and landing. So as a kayaker, I really try and stay out of the way of sailboats, and the sailboats sort of do the north side of the beach, the paddleboards sort of do the south, and the kayakers find spots in the middle. And I do stay out of the lanes of the boats. But I've been yelled at by sailors before, like, hey, you have more control, get out of my way, you know, kind of thing. And I don't mean it as a complaint, but once again, it's like the sailors and the kayakers and the stand-up paddlers. So I'd love to see a mixing of the community, whether it be different lanes for going in and out or different ways of communicating the I don't know what the etiquette of launching and landing, and then and also not having swimmers there, so that those people who like just put up their stuff and hang out on the beach all day, when their kids are playing there, they say it's okay. I'm like, it's not okay. There's nowhere to go if it's wavy, and launching and landing can be a little bit more tricky, and people just let their kids play there. So again, trying to, instead of it being separate communities and, oh, you're a kayaker, so, you know, you don't know what it's like to be a sailor. I would love to see a little bit of bridging of that. I don't know if the sailors feel that in any way. And then the last thing, sort of in terms of how I envision the buildings, and again, this is just a concept, but I had been, before I moved up, you know, I had been at Lincoln Park Boat Club in the city. And there is just almost a sense that you do a check-in. They used to have us even sign in, so that because you would take the boat, sign in and out. But you could do a weather check-in, a check-in, just a well-being kind of thing. So anyway, just going back to this, one of the things that I've tried to do, it's very, very loose, but you know, I don't like paddling by myself. I like paddling in groups just because I think it's a lot safer. And so I have started what's called Womack Kayak Club. It is not a club. Nobody has to join. It's just a website, and I blog post a few things and try and get people to paddle in groups. We were doing for a while sunset paddles and sunrise paddles, and doing where we would even do like practice rolling and practice wet exits. So again, just incorporating safety into it, incorporating groups and community, and trying to bridge the gaps of all the different communities. So again, I'm not talking specifically about buildings, more about building community.
Hey, Rachel, my name's Jeff. I'm a paddleboarder, so I'll be the third group to weigh in on that. I would echo what you're saying. I think that there is like a clear defined entry point for the paddleboarders. And I'd say a good 80% of the time people probably like adhere to that. But I do think that some extra information on etiquette, whether that's like an information session, extra communication, whatever it is, I do think that would help. It does seem to me that there's much more of a blending where you have the kayaks and the sailboats, and there's more potential for people getting in each other's way. So I do think it would probably benefit from having, if not better, just communication around etiquette, also a clearly defined kind of entry point for the kayaks as well, just to help kind of alleviate that issue. I do think we'd probably benefit from a little bit more strict or just better policing of the people being in the water. I feel like some days you go down there and it's really militant and nobody's in the water, and somebody puts a foot in the water, they get called out. And sometimes it's like you got like 50 people in the water and nobody cares. So I just don't think there's any consistency to that.
Well, I will point out that, as a parent of one of the staffers, I know that they can be slackers at times.
Oh, totally. I get it.
The other thing, of course, is, there's nothing worse than an 18-year-old trying to tell an adult to get out of the water.
Absolutely. And I help them. I back them up. For sure. I'm like, listen, he's telling you to get out of the water. Get out of the water.
I think, again, I think that goes back to Rachel's point about communication around etiquette, so that, multiple people, not just an 18-year-old kid is helping, contribute to the policing of that. I guess I would like to comment a little bit on the facilities. I probably disagree with what's been said so far. I think that there was a really amazing job done on the beach facilities. I think the architecture of it's great. I think it looks great. I think it blends in with the environment really well. I think that if that just continued over to the sailing beach, I think it'd be much more aesthetically pleasing. I think that if you did that, you would create a much more functional facility, both for sailors, kayakers, sub people, but also the people working there, that they'd have better facilities to work in. I think you'd be able to add a permanent bathroom, and whether it's 6-7 months out of the year or 9 months out of the year being functional, that's still the majority of the year. And I think that it is 2020. I think having like modern facilities would be a good thing there. So
the only I know that the architects mentioned this the last stint when they did this, was that in order to do full season, the facilities have to be heated. You can't have bathrooms in the winter without that. And I think that was an extreme cost, if I recall. So that's one.
Are the bathrooms on the regular beach facility, are they heated?
No, I don't believe there's heating in that facility at all.
There's very little kind of tempering of it. It's not a full-on heating system.
So are the bathrooms closed? They are closed in the winter then, right?
They're closed and winterized. Yes.
Okay.
So why couldn't they do that on the sailing beach side?
Oh, no, and I think that was, when we were talking about it years ago, that's what the plan was. It's just, there.
I think it's safe to say that you could heat them. And at the time we were doing the beach house project, the financial constraints around the project, it was one of the things that got engineered out of the final product.
I know that one thing that we asked for on the sailing beach side was, if we weren't going to do the bathrooms down at the sailing beach, which turns out we didn't, was that we at least bring plumbing down there, sewer down there, so that in the future we would do this. We wouldn't have to tear up the work that was already done. I believe that was taken out of the final project because, no, it was done?
So we stubbed water lines into basically where the gate is on the road. So where the road is, there's fresh water lines into there. Sewer, it's a much more complex issue.
I think there was a lift thing.
Yeah, there would have to be a separate sewer system that goes straight up the bluff to Michigan Avenue there, versus going back to the other lift station that's by the bike path down the bluff in the parking lot. So so we did get a good portion of the utilities in there, but there's other things that need to be figured out. Yeah,
so I mean, it's there, it's ready to go, which would be great, and as to what the actual facilities look like, connecting nice portables up or doing actual buildings in there. I'm either way. It's, the one thing that was pointed out, and you can see that this year a little bit more, or last year, the area to put them is really small. They ended up cutting into the berm in order to put those the portalettes on the south side. And as to how that ends up working, I don't know.
Well, one thing I think to understand, and I don't want to assume nobody understands this, but the lake level is an actual cycle. I mean, it's a huge issue right now. It's very, very high. I watch this very carefully. We've had a place up on Lake Michigan up in Wisconsin, which is about 3 feet above the water's level for 30 some years. So but if you look at the history of the lake levels through, I believe it's through NOAA, you'll see that it's a 20 to 30 year cycle. So we should be on a downswing. I mean, this past season with the water coming up to the road was extraordinarily rare, but it will happen again. I guess to comment back on the character that I'm concerned with, I just think that I don't care if we talk about modern structures or if we talk about more old town contextual structures. I just think that the most important thing to keep in mind down there is the scale, and I think that the approach needs to be less of a big building to handle storage and rentals and staff and office and bathrooms, and it has to be a series of pods, or else we're going to have just too massive of a structure down there in regard to that intrinsic character of this sandy little goofy sailing beach we've got. And it's actually quite big. I think it's the best sailing beach in the Midwest for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no,
and I do like what happened with the driving, the way that the parking is and the way the flow is. I think that's good. I've lately been riding my bike down. And so one, I'd like to see, more bike racks over there. And two, minimize the cars. Like the cars have to come in, drop off boats. But there are times when cars do congregate, at least especially on the north end or along the road. So again, keeping it where cars are really drop off equipment, leave, and keep that as much as possible.
Yeah, and I know that when they were doing the policing, when it got bad, the only way to get the cars out of there is to get the police down there and ticket them. So that was always a big issue. And eventually they just, got tired of putting up with people saying, yeah, I'll move it in 5 or 10 minutes. They just started calling the police force and having them ticketed. And,
I guess I don't understand why we can't just have like the park district have some kind of financial penalty as well. It's like you pay to be at the sailing beach. Like if your car is down there, like you have to pay a $30 fine to the park district for being down there. Why do we need to police? Like the police shouldn't be going down there anyway. It's like a dead end for them.
And if it went to the pizza fund for the shack kids,
there you go.
The cars would be out of there in seconds.
Right. Like let's find a way to align a sentence.
And Steve, I believe that does the park district employ people that are allowed to ticket? There's something weird about how the ticketing can occur.
Yes. You're striking a nerve for me.
Sorry.
It is a weird dynamic that I want to revisit with our village staff. What has always been the case is they have to be hired and trained by the police department to be authorized to write citations, because all those moving violation parking tickets ultimately go to court, right? And so they're hired and trained by the police, and we repay the police, but we set their schedule. It's a very murky thing. And so we don't feel like we have as much control. We also don't reap the financial benefits of those penalties. Those go to the village. So we can't buy the shack pizza with those funds. But it is something that I know the village has changed the way they're administering that sort of thing. They've stopped going to the circuit court system and they're holding a local court. So I wonder if that changes any of the other aspects of the way it works. And so it is a topic we're going to be opening discussion on here soon with the police and the village management.
I mean, couldn't you just have just a park district, you know, a violation. So it's not even a legal thing.
We could, and that's the road we would potentially go. We don't know all the rules, don't know our ability to enforce those rules, things like that. So we've got to look at a lot of legal aspects before we decide how we move forward. But we agree with the general concept that getting people to comply with getting the cars in to drop things off and then out, so it's not clogging things up. We're 100% with the sentiment you all are expressing.
Well, maybe
and also the one thing to think about, that the number of days out of the summer where it's an issue is probably less than 10 or 15. So on the, you know, we go down a lot on the evenings. You know, we'll have pizza or, you know, stuff on the, you know, on the beach, and just go down and leave the car sit there. And there's 2 cars down there. It's us and the other family that we're with. So the actual policing action really is you know, there's a threshold as to when we need to start kicking the cars out. And I think that that's one of those things that, you know, if the park district were running it, it would be flexible. And I think that that's important to consider.
Well, I think if one car does it, everyone starts doing it. That's what I've experienced, and it's absolutely irritating. And maybe what they need to do, and I know we're getting into the weeds here, but maybe what needs to happen is it needs to be like what they do with the sailboats with the bridges on the Chicago River. They're only open a certain period. You can go in, drop off. Otherwise, they're closed. You walk into the parking lot. You cannot park on that road. You know, obviously we'd have setup and breakdown at the beginning and end of the season. But you know, just because somebody has you know, a bunch of coolers and chairs they want to haul in doesn't mean they should park on that beach. And really, it's you know, many of the offenders are the ones who have been there the longest, which I get, I suppose, but it's just kind of inconsiderate. So I think that just keep the gate closed. I mean, I park in the parking lot and I haul my stuff in. If I've got to haul my sails in and my gear, you know, I have no problem asking staff for permission to go through the gate for 10 minutes while I dump my stuff and come back out. That's the best.
Well, and it might also be the kind of thing that, you know, when you bring your car in, if you're doing a drop off, you get a sticker on your windshield that says the car has to be moved in 10 minutes. You know, or something.
Like time in, time out, for sure.
Yeah. Steve, I know that this is more geared towards the beach architecture, and this is getting into, you know, the process around the sailing beach, which is always a good, you know, it's a good thing. I love this concept.
Understanding process helps them understand how the buildings are going to be.
Absolutely.
So that's, I think,
this actually was never intended to just be about architecture.
Oh, okay, great. No.
This is a focus group about everything, so we can get as much information, and our consultants and staff and our board can put together a plan that services all of our operations and all of our users as best as possible. So there's nothing wrong with any of this. This is very valuable for all of us to hear. So I just want to make sure that everyone's having a chance to speak. And I know Jeff has tried a couple times and we've veered away from him. I know Marianne hasn't had a chance yet. So I want to make some room for everybody to have a chance to get everything out that they want. So I don't mean to cut anyone off. It's been a really good conversation, but I want to make sure we give everyone else a chance as well. Jeff, do you have anything more?
Yeah, I have one other quick thing. And again, it's specific to, I believe it's specific to the stand-up paddleboards. There might be some aspect of this for the kayaks as well, but the racks for the stand-up paddleboards are under sand. And I totally get it's because the water's come up and there's been storms and that kind of thing. I brought it up at the beginning of the season, and the feedback I got was they were going to try to pull them up out of the sand. And that never happened. I'm assuming they're probably even more under sand now at this point. It's like my board basically just sat in sand. It wasn't, because the sand is like up like 2 feet. So at some point, I do think they need to lift them, reset them, whatever that is. Because it's like the new people have boards that are back in the back and they're totally fine. But like mine's closer to the beach and it's like sits in the sand. That's all.
And I want to give you some feedback on that specifically. When we were getting ready for last summer, we were in the middle of a shutdown coming out of COVID. I literally had full-time management staff down there with shovels trying to get the beach ready. So we definitely didn't employ our normal preseason operations. So I do think that probably contributed to it, and hopefully it'll be better going forward.
Awesome, thanks.
I have a couple comments. My family is 4th generation Wilmette. I have 3 watercraft down there, a sailboat, a stand-up paddleboard, and a kayak. So I would consider my family to be a super user. My kids are competitive sailors. And so I want to just reiterate that I think policing is a huge issue. As owning the 3 different watercrafts, my most annoyed is when I'm sailing and there's like kids like hanging over the edge of their paddleboard with goggles on. They're not even paying attention to the surroundings. I personally would love to see kayaks having to go south and keeping them from the sailing part of it. I also am very old school. I started going to that beach when there was no parking lot. It was all beach, all the way up to that bluff. And so I am 100% less is more. I don't think we need bathrooms. We already have portable changing stations. I think the bathrooms have gotten, the portalettes have gotten nicer over the years. I think it has a certain character and that we already have problems with people coming to the sailing beach who do not belong there. And I think making it nicer might even exacerbate that problem. I loved it just the way it was. I love it the way it is. And I just think less is more. I would like to see more policing. And I know that I got a new rack last year for my sailboat, which was very exciting. I have a wooden one now instead of a metal one. And I'm assuming all the rest, or eventually there'll be new racks for everybody. So I hope that's the case because I think that's a real weak link. I'd like to see a lot more education, especially of the stand-up paddleboarders and the kayakers about, how challenging it can be to launch and land a sailboat when you've got your centerboard up and you can't steer at all. I mean, I keep a whistle on my jacket so that I can communicate with the people who aren't paying attention because it's such a safety issue. And those are my thoughts.
What is happening with new racks? Are they all going to be eventually replaced to wooden?
I don't know if I can answer that 100% honestly. What I can tell you is that we have money budgeted this year to continue replacing racks, but okay. I don't know if we're achieving all of them this year or if it's a more of a multi-year process.
Okay.
The progress was awesome with that. So, crap, if it takes 5 years to do, that's fine. Just the new ones are so much nicer.
One other comment, and I'm saying this fully recognizing that 99% of the responsibility falls on my shoulders. I had two paddles stolen from the beach this past summer. I've been keeping my paddles down there without a lock on them for the past 6-7 years and never had an issue. And then within a week, I had 2 paddles stolen because I got one stolen, then I bought a lock, and before I was even able to get down there to put it on the second one, I had that one stolen. So I don't know what was different about this year versus the previous 6 years.
But for what piece of equipment?
What's that?
Oh, stand-up paddleboard or kayak?
Stand-up paddleboard.
Ironically,
so I bought locks for him. I bought locks for him. So again, 99% of the responsibility on my shoulders, and I bought locks, but it just speaks to there's some bad element of things that has shifted in the past 12 months versus the previous.
Yeah. So I will tell you that, from being down there and again, talking with my son who works there, the number of after hours people at the beach in the spring was insane. And it was, a lot of it was driven by the COVID lockdown and, the high schoolers going down there because it was really the only place to go. There were, we heard the rumors, and I've seen the posts of Instagram accounts and Snapagram or Snapchats or whatever the hell they are, of city kids saying, we're having a party at Gillson. And if you remember June, late May, early June, at 10 o'clock at night, that parking lot was full of young kids, and again, I got a high schooler, so I know what they were going through, but they just walk up and down the beach. I mean, we'd have stuff taken. We had kids out stealing kayaks, going out and paddling at night, and it was bad. I mean, it really was bad, and it's dangerous. People who don't know the lake is dangerous. I mean, it can really do some numbers on you if you're not paying attention. And I know that eventually the park district did lock down the parking lot. Took a little bit of coordination between them and the police to actually do it. But I mean, I remember nights that, you know, kids were driving around the parking lot in Jeeps with kids hanging off the Jeep, you know, having a good old time like they, you know, like they were immortal. And, you know, that was part of the problem. I know eventually you guys put a webcam down there, or we're talking about doing security cameras down there. I don't know what the end result of that was.
We did do throughout the district, but down at Gillson, we did add cameras in multiple locations. There are now a couple cameras on the sailing beach. They're focused more north and south, up and down the roadway, and they catch what they do onto the boat racks, but there's nothing pointed directly towards, you know, we're not surveilling every piece of equipment on that beach, I should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a bad mix. We noticed it too. It was COVID, and then I went and there was a policeman down there in his car, and I went over and said, "Gosh, what's going on?" He said, "We can't do anything," and it was because of what had been happening in police around the country. You know, they couldn't even approach kids because they would get, you know, sued or whatever. I mean, which is a pathetic state of existence. But I think that you know, that's probably going to calm down, I would hope. But I mean, it's all. I think it's a lot about the control. And this is something that when you're talking about the master planning here, you know, there's a certain. There are 3 points of entry to that place. There's the vehicular entry, which is the check-in, and then there's the two ends, the north and the south point from the swimming beach and from the private property. I think the park district's got to do their best to control the north and south beach access for the walkers. And I remember when my oldest was working down there. I mean, he was kind of in charge of, or felt like he was in charge of patrolling and kind of checking passes of people set up on the beach. But he's also 6'6", so that helps him a little bit. You know, these are kids, and like was said earlier, that kind of control, I think, can absolutely be managed by the design of that entry point, and I think it's much better now. But I think that, you know, whatever happens down there, whether it's bathrooms or not, or a combined series of pods of structures or a slow, you know, kind of phased approach, it's really important to maintain those basic components. I mean, these kids also are up in that crow's nest watching for people in trouble out on the water, which is a pretty big charge for a 16 or 18-year-old kid. They do a great job of it, but you know, those components are going to be, I think, not only imperative to maintain in terms of how they've worked for 50 years, but also, you know, back to that character and context. If you haven't figured out, that's important to me, just because of some of the painful things that have happened in our community when eyes aren't on things like what happened on the Green Bay corridor with that enormous, and apologies if anyone had anything to do with it, but that enormous multi-story hotel-like structure that now, you know, overshadows the Green Bay scale and context. I mean, these are important town issues. A town like this is developed over time, and that needs to be paid attention to. And we can play nicely with these kind of unique structures when they're standalones or specific use type structures, but it has to be done subtly and with a gentle hand, so that in 20 years it doesn't look like something that, boy, that was done in 2022. You know, that's the last thing you want. You need longevity when you're spending this kind of money.
Hey, Jeff, when you talk about locking your paddles on the rack, is this the kind of thing that if we did some sort of device on all of them that would be, there's a padlock kind of thing that's on there that, the only thing you'd have to supply is a padlock, and then there's a piece of iron that's locked down. Would that be something that would be good to add to the sup racks?
I've seen racks that can lock boards just because they're kind of like wide, but I don't know. There's so many different size boards now. There's probably not a universal way to do it. With regard to the paddles, probably not. Like the locks that you can buy, they're like $35. They're not. We've
got to stand up under our cat. So I've got the little the insert there, but yeah. I put the paddles inside my sail tube, which is locked. So I don't have that worry.
The locks that you use for your paddle hook up to the end of the paddle where the ankle strap goes. So like you can the same cable you use, you just slide on the paddle lock, and the paddle lock slides onto the paddle, and it goes right around. It's just a
little clamp,
right? And it's a $35 clamp. And I don't know how else you would do it. Like I don't think there's a way to do something on the rack that would lock your paddles.
Okay.
Again, the issue isn't about securing my paddle. I think the issue is what's been discussed, which is there's just a broader bad element that came down there this past year, and it sounds like it's largely due to COVID, but I think it's still worth considering. How do we have just better security overall in case we have another continuation of COVID or something next time that happens? I don't know.
Yeah.
So kind of going down that same path, what are your guys' thoughts on the way that the gate currently interacts with the sailing beach and just access in general from Lake Avenue?
Well, the last time I was down there, and it's been a while, the one gate was broken off completely. The arm that goes up and down, has that been repaired?
I don't know if you heard the story. There was a dad that wasn't paying attention and ran into it with his bicycle. So you would think that it would, yes, he took it out with a bike. So, oh well.
Maybe we need, I apologize for suggesting this, Steve, but maybe we need to have a better quality gate.
I mean,
maybe he was a big guy. You don't know.
You don't know. Oh, well.
I'm wondering if it would be useful to look at the map, Tom. I'd like to understand where people are launching. I'd like to get a better sense of, like, spatially. I'm not sure we have a full understanding of that.
Can you enable the screen sharing, Steve?
Absolutely. You should be able to share now.
All right. Can everyone see the map?
Mm-hmm.
All right. I'll just kind of zoom in.
So is it the case that all the stand-up paddle boards, the sailing boats, and the kayaks are all kind of launching in this kind of, for lack of a better, in the orange area here?
Well, so the orange area is actually, if you look at the west end of it, you see two little boxes. Those are the two shacks, right? Those are the sailing shacks. The sups are to the right of the orange, and you can see the two rows of in there. And there's actually a third row now towards the parking lot. The first, I want to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, maybe 7 rows underneath the word sailing beach are the kayaks and sunfish, small boats. So yeah, the orange circle is sups. The next section is small boats. And then to the left, and it goes significantly farther, are the multi-hulls. And traditionally, people take the shortest path to get their boats in the water. They go directly to the water. And so for the most part, it's not too bad. The kayakers go straight out, the sups go straight out. The challenge, I think, is when the winds are coming off the lake. Nobody wants to go out into the lake because it's hard. So they go north and south. So the kayakers get in the water and they go to the left or to the right. To the right is a challenge because the swimming beach is right there. And of course, you can't put the vessels inside the swimming beach. So to go south, you actually have to go east quite a bit before you can get around.
Mm-hmm.
They have a tendency to do this.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, was there not a satellite location this year for COVID for kayaking, or was that?
No, there's Steve. Is the south launch still there, or was that all moved up?
The south launch was moved for the season onto the sailing beach. We were, dealing with the high water issues on the south beach a lot, and we decided due to COVID that we weren't going to do the rentals that we normally do, where people can come in who aren't sailing beach members and rent a kayak and SUP and other vessels. So we had space because we weren't putting our equipment out to consolidate the southern satellite location onto the sailing beach. That was told to all of those individuals as a one-year endeavor, but that who knows if we continue that practice. I guess I do.
So is this the area generally where people tend to congregate with their cars, or is it backed up behind the gate?
All along that road.
It's all along the path, and there's a lot on the north side too.
Yeah,
like
and this diagram doesn't show it, but if you take that brownish line and extend it out, there's a cul-de-sac at the end, which is the turnaround, and you come back out. And so you park next to your rack, your row. You unload your coolers, you bring them up, and then you're supposed to drive back and then park.
Yeah, I know who they are. I'm on the list.
I'm sorry, Chip, what was that?
I know who they all are if anyone wants a list.
I'm sure my name's on there eventually.
No.
Actually, I know we're not, because my son would yell at me.
So the other question that I was going to ask as we're talking about sort of architecture and things like that is, do we want a barrier between the sailing beach and the swimming beach? Would it be a natural barrier? We've talked about dune, we've talked about fence, we've talked about other stuff. Do we want that open? What do we want the sight lines to be? So those are also some of the things to think about. And if we are going to go in the same venue as like the beach house, where it's 3 separate little buildings, would we do that? Would they be connected? Those are sort of questions I was wondering as well.
Sure. Would it be located just south of where the SUPs are?
I think that's what she's saying. Being a SUP person, I'm always down at that end of the beach, and it continually is an issue of people coming from the regular beach, pay beach, into the sailing beach area. And not that we have to like police the people that much. It's just those are the people that come into the area and they don't know the etiquette. They don't know that they're not supposed to swim. They don't know that they got to keep an eye out for sailboats that are going to be, coming into the beach. They don't know to get out of the way of other vessels coming into the beach. So it's almost a safety issue for everybody, to more so than it is about like keeping the riffraff out. Of course, I'd like to keep the riffraff out, but I think it is a safety.
Well, I mean, my biggest concern is that someday there is an accident and somebody gets really hurt, and there's a lawsuit, and then all of a sudden, that's why we don't have nice things anymore. That's my big concern. So safety is always an issue. I know the architects, one of the plans for the beach house was kind of doing it not necessarily where that orange section is that's going east and west, but a little bit south of that, and doing a kind of a split building that would be, the south side of it serving as a beach house and the north side serving the sailing community. I think one of the concerns with that was that the area where that southmost circle is floods quite a bit. So there's a natural depression in that area, and anything that you do there, you're either going to have to do some extensive, ground manipulation to get the buildings up high, or they're going to be flooded. And especially now, I mean, if you go down there, I mean, I'm sure right now, if you go down there, there's 6 inches of water in there from the storm we just had.
Sure.
And your recollection is correct, and we did discuss that exact dynamic yesterday when we were talking to employees of the village and the water plant there. So that you're absolutely right. That's why that location wasn't ideal.
Sure. So I might know the answer to this already, but as you guys know, there's this accompanying the beach house is a really nice sort of boardwalk path that splits it and the parking lot. And one thought that we've had, just kind of throwing it out there, is continuing that character along towards this sailing beach. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
That would be nice. And also down towards the water. You know, when in years past, when we've had like a plastic sheet down, it's been easier to walk towards the water, and people have used that for kayaks, for walking, for other things. So perpendicular to what you're talking about.
So like fingers that go out toward the lake, is that what you mean, Doctor? Yeah.
Yeah, right there where the orange bar is, like there'd been a heavy like plastic path that just wasn't done this year because of like what Steve had referenced before, because we didn't have enough time to prepare and all that kind of stuff. I yes, need to have that come back for sure, because like that's just ease of use for people to get out to the water. As far as a sidewalk continuing through to where the sailing beach is, in my mind, it's completely unnecessary. Like it would look nice, but as far as like a path to walk, like the road is perfectly fine to walk on. I think that again, just assuming that we get the cars off the road, then there's absolutely no issue with people like getting through there with just the paved path as it is already. From an aesthetic standpoint, sure, it would look better, but that would seem to me to be a little bit more than is needed.
Yeah, and I completely agree with that. I think that bringing it up to the shacks is fine. The big problem that we always have is the sand drift. And if you did do sidewalks all the way down to the cul-de-sac, they'd be covered with sand. So you'd be spending a lot of money for something that would never be seen.
Yeah, they wouldn't survive.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not a fan of extending that, but I'm a huge fan of getting that plastic walkway back. For quite a few years, my 90-year-old mother-in-law, when you could still have partners on a kayak, was a partner on our kayak, and you know, she was in her 90s, and you know, was a huge sailing beach fan, and so that plastic walkway is good for handicapped people too. You know,
I think they were originally weren't they originally done for ADA?
Yeah, so let me chime in on what those mats are. On our swimming beach, we are required to make it ADA accessible. So we buy those rubber mats for the swim beach. They are extremely heavy, they are extremely expensive, but they're extremely valuable for making the beach accessible for people of all abilities. And when those get old and they're no longer serving that primary purpose of what they're purchased for, we do kind of grandfather them down to the sailing beach, because we understand exactly what you're about. You know, that there it's not as much about ADA, it's about making it easier to manage all the equipment to and from the racks in the water. And so we understand that. It's not something that we specifically have historically budgeted to include. It's really kind of a, hey, we have this resource here that we're retiring for this purpose. We can repurpose it over here. But hearing the feedback of how much they really are valued is good for us as we make future planning and budgetary decisions.
I love how you delegated us to hand-me-downs.
That's all you get, Chris. You want a shack, you're going to get hand-me-downs.
I've got to step out for a meeting, but I'd like to be considered for future discussions. Oops, there we go. So don't mean to be rude, but thanks everyone. I'll talk to you later.
And I've got an 11 o'clock also. Again, Steve, thanks a lot. This was great. Gents from the architect firm, again, you guys did a wonderful job. I don't know if we've said that enough to you guys, but that was fantastic.
He's heard it plenty.
Excellent.
Thanks.
Good.
Thanks, Chris. It's good to see you.
Yep.
All right. Anybody else online have any other questions or thoughts or ideas? Anything else with the park really? It doesn't have to be necessarily the sailing beach either. If there's any other independent thoughts? I don't know if we've lost everybody. If we have any.
We have two still. We have Rachel and Jeff still. Nope. Jeff signing off. Rachel, the
Yeah,
floor.
I'm gonna have to go in a minute, but again, the only thing, like I said, it would be nice as we're thinking about the usefulness of it. I like it as a check-in. I always sort of pop in, say hi to the people at the beach, and ask, let them know I've checked the weather and see if they've heard any shifts and things like that. So I love it being somewhere where it's going to be a check-in point and a community point, and that's, I guess, and support those 18-year-olds that have to police and help carry my kayak down to the water. They're great at that. Anyway, thank you guys for doing this. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. Good to see you.
All right,
Thank you.
Bye.